Quickly get to the markets now. The JSE facing mixed trading this morning, with the spotlight shifting to U.S. corporate earnings reports for the fourth quarter. Market activity so far in 2022 has been driven by expectations of rising interest rates in the United States, and investors will be looking at the earnings reports as they consider the outlook for the U.S. economy. ABSA Asset Management analyst Roy Mutooni joining us now to talk us through the latest business news. Roy, very good morning to you. I think it's the first time I'm talking to you this year, so Happy New Year. Give us a sense of how the markets have opened this morning.
Are quite soft this morning. I think in the top 40, the only positives are Sasol and MTN and I think Exxaro, which I think just reflects the bullish oil price sentiment. You remember MTN has a big presence in Nigeria, which is an oil exporter, and Sasol is a big player in the oil market. So outside of that, most of the other stocks in the top 40 have sold off. You've seen some positives in the small and mid caps, but the more significant news today is more around what's happening in that top 40.
Gold prices falling in early trade, with oil prices jumping above 7-year highs. Talk us through what is driving these moves.
So it's actually quite an interesting interaction between some major factors. So gold tends to do well when the dollar is weakening. As we've seen, the dollar index has fallen from about 97 to 95. And also when inflation is rising. So that should be a perfect environment for gold. But what we've seen as well is that U.S. long bond rates are increasing. We've seen them increase from 1.6 to 1.8, and that's negative for gold. So up until now, that rate increase has not been the preeminent factor driving it, but it looks like it's put a cap on the gold price, and I guess that's why you're seeing the gold price peaking. With regards to the oil price, it's a combination of, I think, three key factors. First of all, we're seeing significant growth in air travel. Remember, last year there wasn't much air travel because of Omicron and the virus at large, but that's recovered. And on the supply side, you're not seeing an increase in supply. Libya is struggling. The Saudis can't increase production, and even the African producers aren't producing more. In fact, most of the big OPEC Plus members are producing at maximum capacity and can't expand. So you have a classic case of demand outpacing supply. And then we had a bit of geopolitics with that attack in the UAE or the UAE airport. So I guess that brings in a little bit of uncertainty, and that pushes the prices up. So you've got an underpin to this oil price that should go on. And I think later on this week we'll hear what OPEC says about the ability to produce and supply into the market. And I don't think it's going to be too different a story.
Let's talk company news, Roy. Heineken considering disposing of its Strongbow cider brand in South Africa, and this is in order to be proactive about possible competition commission concerns. Are these efforts to try and avoid possible punishment?
So if you think about it, when you have these big mergers or acquisitions, there's always, especially from dominant or large players in industries, there's always places where competition authorities will look in. So Strongbow is the world's largest cider brand, whereas Savannah, which is owned by Distell, is the world's fastest growing cider brand. So it's very clear that's where the spotlight will be. So I guess what these guys are trying to do is to be proactive, exactly as they say, and try and remove any level of conflict that could exist, because they want the Distell group with most of its brands and the way it is going into the Africa region. And I guess they're willing to sacrifice to some extent the Strongbow. So that's where I think the sticking point would be. And I guess they want to address that before the competition authorities start looking into it closely.
Let's conclude our conversation with Tonath Hulett, which is trying to or preparing a digital gathering of its shareholders this morning. The subject matter asking them to back the implementation of a 4 billion rand rights offer at around 9:30 this morning. How's that likely to pan out?
So this is one of those very difficult situations. They need the money. Their bankers have asked them to raise a minimum of 2 billion. Remember, this 2 billion is about 3 times its current market cap, so it's a massive stretch. They've got an underwriter, which is a Zimbabwean family. but it's going to be heavily dilutive. The current shareholders will be diluted quite significantly. And the problem is you won't know what price the rights offer is until after the meeting, after the general approval has been gained. So there's a little bit of argy-bargy and I think discomfort among the minority shareholders. And I think a big thing is you just need 10% of the minority share, 10% of the shareholders to refuse this deal for the company to now start looking at another deep dark hole. So it's very interesting. I think the meeting's already begun. So all the best to the minority.
Roy Mutooni, thank you very much for that markets update. He is with ABSA Asset Management.